My name is Blake Decker. I'm 32 years old. I grew up in Mesa, Arizona. I had a 4-year collegiate career at UNLV over in Las Vegas. Transitioning out of that, I accepted a job with Abbott in the medical device space. Kind of what I thought was going to be the pinnacle of what I wanted. And as I navigated what was my 7.5 career in the medical device space, it wasn't the ultimate goal of what I wanted with my life and a lifestyle that was conducive to one that I wanted to lead. I've been asked for really the last 6 months, and as I made a transition out of medical device sales into this, biggest question was why? And the second biggest question was, well, how's it going?
My name is Matt Jackson from Provo, Utah. Growing up in that area, I actually went to college in Provo, went to BYU. When I graduated in 2016, the clear path for me was choose tech. It's exciting, something that takes you on a good trajectory for your career. I got recruited into a company called Weave. Led a sales team, got to President's Club a couple of times, 3.5 years in, 3 years in. Got promoted to my dream position. I noticed I'm not as excited as I thought I was going to be. Something that I loved to do for many years became dull, right? It lost its luster. The tech industry started to fail more than it had back in the day when there were 20x valuations turned into 2 to 3x valuations. The most important thing to me is my family and having freedom to be with my family and creating a life where I have that freedom. I had heard about solar sales for many years, for about 4 years to this point, but there were things that I was hesitant about. The bro culture, being with people that I just didn't trust. So I kind of sat back, kept looking at it during my time in tech. I noticed that my best friend Blake was actually at Radix, and I actually hadn't known it for a couple of months, but he showed up at Radix and I gave him a phone call.
Matt calls me, I'm driving home, I'm on the 17, coming back from some appointments, and we just started on this conversation about how similar and paralleled our journeys were in the corporate space, right? And he was asking all the right questions as to how do you make that jump in transition. Lo and behold, 2 days later, he calls me, he's on a flight that night, coming to Arizona. We sit down, me, Matt Stetson, have this really cool heart-to-heart. And it was in that moment that Matt was committed to solar, right? And it was a very...
But with Stetson though too, Stetson was like, hey, come down on a blitz, don't spend a ton of, don't make any crazy decisions. And I said, no, Stetson, I'm quitting my job right now, which is funny because I actually went back to Utah and quit on my birthday.
Matt relocated his entire family to come down here, right? And Matt has proven over the last couple months that he's one of our top guys in the company. It's been incredible to watch. It's a huge blessing that I am so convinced that this job can change people's lives and people that I care about change their lives. Because I think that's the biggest testament.
The funny thing is I was working with really impressive people in the tech space. And so when I quit, they all were like, what are you doing, right? It was almost like, hey, you're jumping away from this amazing industry. It's been amazing for 20 years, right? To go do door-to-door sales, which in the tech space is visualized as like, this is a step down. We got down here and instantly it felt like a step up. And it was like a springboard to the next level that I had been looking for.
We've set really clear expectations with all the people that have reached out to us about what this job entails. It has the lowest floor and the highest ceiling of any job that I think is imaginable. We try to be as transparent as we can with people that when they come into the industry, your earning potential will never be higher. But there's a lot of really gritty things that you have to do to earn that money, right? It doesn't come free. You do put in a ton of sweat equity, but what we've loved about the process is that sweat equity molds you into becoming a better salesman, becoming a better friend, husband, teammate, colleague. And so with that, this job is gritty, right?
It's tough. To that point though, the benefit of that is my wife. So she's always checking in on me to say, hey, you seem stressed in this job, or you don't like this job. I can tell you don't like this new promotion, right? She said ever since I've switched over to doing this job, even though it's been a lot harder for me to walk the streets and do those things, she's like, you seem way happier.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes to the autonomy being with her. Sometimes I'm with her less in this job, other times I'm with her more, right? But there's autonomy and there's excitement around building and hitting the pavement and building something great.
The autonomy that you have within this space to say, on a random Wednesday afternoon, hey, I can't make it out. I've got X, Y, and Z with my kids, with my wife. to have that flexibility and still have like uncapped earning potentials, you're not going to find that anywhere else, right? So that's been the biggest blessing. As Matt and I have talked about this, the ability to build moving forward while still maintaining autonomy that we never had in the corporate space, it's been the biggest blessing in my life. Like, it's changed my dynamic as a husband and as a father, all for the better. And it's funny because we haven't even talked about this, but Jill's told me the same thing. It's like, you've just been happier. And I've been putting in the same amount of hours, but they're my hours when I want to put them in.
For 4 years, I knew about the solar space, and I didn't trust the people that I knew in the industry. That was a big thing for me. When I got to Radix, I had already had really big, high trust in Quaid and Dave. They spent a lot of time talking to me beforehand. Obviously, I had trust in Blake and Stetson as well, right? But once I joined Radix, that trust grew even more, which is insane. Usually it doesn't work that way, right? And I've had people, those friends that are in other companies in the industry, reach out to me and say, hey, why did you choose Radix? Are you liking it, right? And instantly, that's the first thing I jump to is, hey, well, why are you asking? What's going on at the company you're at, right? And a lot of people have raised concerns of, hey, there's been some shadiness going on at this company. And for me, I've been able to turn back to them and say, hey, well, that's the great thing about Radix, is I've only gained more trust since I've been here, and it's been a great experience all the way around.
So I think there's a huge stigma behind the door-to-door space, specifically for guys that, you know, are in the corporate world and what their perception is of the space. And we had that perception. Like, we had that stigma. From the time we came out of college, we said the door-to-door space wasn't for us because of the bro culture and because of the flash and because of the exotic cars. In conversations with friends, we found so many of them got sucked back into going back every single year to do door-to-door so they could maintain spending what they were continually spending. What we found with Radix is the complete opposite.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I grew up in Provo, so those of you that know the door-to-door space, that is the mecca of door-to-door. And I told myself my whole life, I'm never getting into door-to-door. It's not going to happen, right? For that exact reason, right? There's this stigma, there's all this exotic spending. What drew me to Radix was the mission is really about long-term wealth and creating freedom for your family, right? And so instantly I was drawn toward that because that had been my goal for the last 5 to 6 years, is create freedom and build long-term wealth that is going to be generational and something that we can do whatever we want to do.
100%. And that starts at the top. I've never been more confident in a group of men between Stetson, Quaid, Dave, Nick, and DJ to bring somebody that I trust into this space and know that they're going to get taken care of with transparency of pay, a true culture that values your lifelong earnings and building wealth for your future. And that's why I jumped in. Like, that's honestly the biggest question I get asked is why Radix? That's why Radix. Because of these guys, because of what they've built, because I trust in that wealth building for the future and the stability that's within that. And so I think the coolest part of our story is, and our ask is, if any part of you has resonated with what our journey has been and like the questions, if you've had those same questions, reach out. Because I think now is the greatest opportunity, the greatest timetable to jump into this, which was a hesitancy that we first had, which is, are we too late to the game?
It's kind of the same in tech. You want to be with a company that's a Series B or a Series C round. It's just before they're blowing up to become a public company. Radix feels like it's in that still infancy where you have the transitions, the transparency, but it's grown enough to where it's in that really exciting growth stage that people really look for in tech. And that's one of the things that drew me to Radix as well.
Radix has proven that like now is the best time to come do this.